This is the intro to API talk. Quick note on the slides, they are 2 years old, which is where they're from. And so I'm Heyman. I'm the director of R&D. Was here around here 2 years when the slides were made, helped make them. And yeah, we've been giving this workshop to prepare you for HackerU, because anytime you go to a hackathon, this topic will help you a lot. And so yeah, let's get into it so that you can build awesome hacks. So essentially, the idea is normally when you build a project, for example, your data structures projects, or I don't know, even a side project like a little video game you want to make, you start building from scratch and then you do programming, right? So, you'll just start coding stuff like iOS apps or, and let's say you want to code something that interacted with the Rutgers dining hall, right? Like you wanted to make some app like this so that you can navigate the dining hall menu on your phone. I don't know, this is like just an example. We'll get to doing something like it. So what you'll need to do is be able to interact with the service that manages the dining halls, right? And there's some stuff you can't build from scratch, and so you use an API. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So it's an interface that lets you program applications. And it helps connect services to your project. So if you want to work with Instagram, Facebook, Google has a lot of APIs. So any of those APIs, basically what you do is there's a service that Google, Instagram, Facebook have that you don't want to recreate. And so you'll use their API so that you use their service. Everything making sense so far? All right. I don't know. It feels weird going through these slides so quickly. Oh, God. Yeah. So this is sort of a more involved example with everything worked out, so you can see how it works with more moving components. I didn't make these slides. Like again, I emphasize, the artwork is not mine. Actually, this is Michelle Zhao. So let's say, I don't know, Chef Heyman is having a diner, right? And he has requirements. Here's his diner, right? And he wants to focus on cooking food. He's a chef. He doesn't care, right, about like deliveries, things like that. But he needs ingredients and orders, right? So question is sort of how does he do that? So he's going to use external services, right? So he's going to use a food delivery service to get the ingredients and things like that. He's going to go to a supermarket. So that sort of interaction is what an API is. Yeah, I can pause here for a bit, right? So the way Chef Heyman would want to focus on only cooking, but use ingredients from supermarkets and coordinate deliveries from other people. That's what an API is, right? So when you're building your hack, you don't want to focus on maybe, oh, how does social media work? You just want to, I don't know, aggregate something about like who's friends with who, right? Or do your graph mining or whatever, your AI thing. You don't want to care about the social media, so you'll just say, hey, Facebook, you're a good social media. I'm going to use your service to get all the information about who's friends with who, and then I can run my data processing thing. So we have an example, an API demo. So if y'all can open this bit.ly if you want to interact with it. I'm just going to pause and drink water. Actually, OK. I guess, OK, I'll just wait a bit. What is it? All right, raise your hands if you're not yet at the link.
Are APIs like free for use for everyone, or is it just?
Depends on the API. The examples I'm going through now, I didn't pay a single penny, so you shouldn't. Yeah, but I can go over some examples later on about how that works. Anybody unable to connect to the site yet? Unwilling is OK, but unable is problematic. All right, so everyone's at some version of this bit.ly. All right. So then I'll escape out. So you should see something like this. In your version, there should be a button here with like two branches like this that says fork. I strongly recommend clicking on it. Actually, please click on it, otherwise everything breaks. It'll basically give you your own version of this code so that you can work with it how you want to, and it doesn't mess with this version. It's on the top end, it looks like that, right? Yeah. Okay. Any issues forking? I can still wait PID. Sorry? You can't see the code? Oh, yeah. So what you're looking at is main.py, which, yeah, it should look like this. Yeah. We'll get to other files later. Oh, while we're here, actually, yeah, once you finish forking, we should do something here. Anybody have troubles forking yet, or is everybody on their own version of the code and we're good? All right, cool. The one thing is, you should change this finished to stub. This is because the finished one is the finished version of where hopefully we'll end up in our HackerR. The stub is sort of a good starting place so that I can start explaining things. So everyone, yeah, change it to stub. And one of these files should be stub.py. All right. So in stub.py, what we've already done for you is written some of the sort of boilerplate out. And I'll go over the boilerplate as we cover it. So the import statements at the top are the two parts of what we're going to build. I should probably go over what we're going to build, so let me do that too. So what we're going to build is a web service. And here, I'm going to draw out in terms of boxes how it'll interact with the internet. So we're going to build a web service here, right? And the thing called Flask is what lets us make this web service without having to learn too much about how the internet actually works. It just wraps all that up for us nicely and makes our code look good. So web service, Flask is used here. And what we're going to do is...
What is Flask?
Yeah, so Flask is just a library that makes it easy to write web services. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's a little more than that technically, but you can use it without knowing all the details, which is why it's good. And I'll go over the Flask specifics as I go through them, as they come up. What's going to happen is there's another service called Twilio. I think it's 1L. Yeah, right? And what Twilio does, Twilio is actually kind of cool. It sets things up so that people with phones can interact with the web in a nicer way. So you can call a Twilio number, and it will interact with the with a specific web service based on how that number is set up. So essentially, it's like a wrapper for the internet for phones, and it lets you have programmable SMS, which is really handy, and programmable calls, which we're going to be working with. So what will essentially happen is, if you have your user, they're going to call Twilio, like with a phone, right? So they're going to make a phone call, and then Twilio is going to do web magic that I will explain to talk to our service, and then our service is going to talk to Rutgers, and specifically Rutgers Dining, right? There's also going to be some web magic that I will explain. And then Rutgers Dining will give us menus, and we'll give Twilio back the menus. And then Twilio will do its thing and actually say the menu to the user. And hopefully some of you will be able to literally do that on your phones. But yeah, this is like the chain of 4 things we're going to go through. This one we don't have to build, this one we don't have to build because of the magic of APIs. This we don't have to build, so we're just building this part. So yeah. So those are the first 2 lines. The first line makes it easy to make this a web service. The second line makes it easy to do this, to talk to Twilio. That's sort of it. I mean, Twilio uses its own data format, which is why it has its own library to do it. And I'm not going to go into that because I haven't read about the data format, because the library works really well.
Are you planning to code it from scratch along with us, or go through the code, like walk through the code?
I'll code some of it from scratch. Or copy pasting it from the finished version and then explaining it because I don't remember it. Okay. So that's that. Requests is a library that'll make this part easy, and when we use it, I will show you how to. It's pretty straightforward. So line 4, or now, well, line 5 now in my version is how you make your web service start existing. So you just have to initialize it to this Flask object, and this is just how the Flask library starts like existing in your code and start knowing things about what your service is supposed to do. This function is a utility that makes responses nicer for us to handle, because we don't want to send them raw data when we're telling a user things over a phone. And I'll get to how this is done when we start calling it and using it. But the first thing you see, right, the first weird part is also line 18, right? Actually, before I do that, how many people know Python? All right. Because this has been Python, and nobody stopped me being like, what the frick am I reading? So that is an important difference. All right. So when you see DEF, you're defining a function. The other thing that's special about Python is colon is like an open brace. And then everywhere you indent is within the open brace. And then undenting is the closing brace. So because here it's unindented, there's sort of an implicit closing brace to match this colon. That's a quick rundown on syntax. Yeah. So what Hello World is it's going to be the first, it's set up to be the default thing our web service does. So it's sort of our home page, quote unquote. I don't know, yeah. So when Twilio also tries calling us, it's where Twilio will go first and try figuring out how it should interact with us and how phone calls to us should work. So right now, just as a quick little example, what we can do in Hello World is literally return the string Hello World, right? I mean, that's usually what Hello Worlds look like. And now if you click, I think it's this button, it'll start doing a lot of things here. So everyone should change the word pass here to return some string, preferably Hello World. But what should happen is this should start having messages. How much bigger can I make it? Okay, it's not redrawing itself. Or, hang on. Okay, cool. This might take a little while because what happens is the website like reinstalls all the libraries just to make sure it's got all the right ones. But what you should see eventually is if you refresh this. All right, I might give mine a minute because. Oh, is there a run button that I'm not?
It's a run button there, so you run and then it will download all the APIs.
Okay, where is the run button on mine? Because I'm super zoomed in. Ah! All right, let's see where the run button is.
Oh, so, yeah, it's a run button. It's like right next to share.
Right next to share. Yeah, this restart button, right?
Yeah, you want to try that.
Okay. Heh. All right, what should happen, right, is if I take this URL. Okay. Weird. I changed this to stub. I changed this Stop to say hello world. You know what I'm going to try doing? All right, let's just force its hand a little bit. Ah, interesting. Okay, so you didn't there we go. Okay, I might have to you might have to refresh the page occasionally. I'm not really sure how this works. What happened here? The view function did not return a response. What?
Wow.
Oh, did I have to return like 200 comma the thing?
She just worked, so.
Did she get hello world?
Yeah.
Okay. You got hello world. Who did not get hello world? Did anybody get this? If you didn't get it, I don't care. Like, it's all about y'all being able to make this, not me. So was everybody able to get hello world on this side?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then it's probably just me having run it like earlier that messes it up. All right, now let me see what we have to do. All right, so the way Twilio handles things, and I'm going to zoom back in so that you guys can see my code. Where am I? Whoa. All right, that was the trick. Whee. Cool. So the way Twilio handles things is you first got to start creating a response. And the way you do that is we just make a new variable. So because this is Python, types are dynamic, meaning you don't need to say them, and Python will just pretend it knows what you're doing. And then finally, when it can't figure out what you're doing, it will throw an error. But we won't get those, so don't worry. And what we'll set this response to is voice response. I think I got that right. Where the heck am I? Yeah. Where am I making it? Yeah. Yeah. So you set your response to an empty voice response, and this is just to prepare the Twilio library to send the user some text. And I mean, so we'll send the Twilio people some text, and then they convert it magically into somebody speaking on the phone. And it's not by hiring a lot of people. And the other thing we're going to set up is something called a gather. And what a gather is this is how Twilio will interact with the phone caller to get numbers that they press on the keypad. So you know how when you call like a servicing thing, it'll say, for blah, 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 para español, press dos, or whatever. I forget the word for press. You know, so it's that kind of thing. And so that's just called a gather. I don't know why they call it, I mean, well, it gathers your response, so it's called a gather. And what you need to specify in the gather is, like, how many digits do you expect the user to press? We're going to set it up with 1. We're not going to have more than 9 options. And the next thing you do is you set it up with an action. So the way the action works is, right, what will happen is, we're going to send a voice response and the gather over, right? And then the user's going to do something. So the user's going to press the numbers on the keypad, and that'll go back here. When it goes back here, Twilio needs to know what to do with it. So the action we pass in tells it what information it should send us so that we can start processing that data. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? I mean, I can go into a little more detail there if you really need me to. All right. And our action, we're going to call it proc numbers. Proc numbers standing for, process numbers. All right. Is everyone following this so far? It's working out. All right. Let's see, what else do we need to do? Gather.say response or gather response. Okay. And so gather.say is sort of what's going to be said so that the user knows what numbers to press. So this part will be, para español. What's the word? Press dos. What? What? Oprima. Yeah. Para español oprima dos. That is the word. Yeah, there we go. Right? So we could say that, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say for dining, press 1, and for this is just an example, and maybe we can add para español prima tres, but and you can make this any string you want, because until a user actually uses it, it doesn't really have to say anything that makes sense. So there's that. Then the next thing is we have to tell the API that our voice response is that gather, and the way we do that is by appending. So what this essentially does is saying, in my voice response, we're doing this gather. That makes sense, roughly, so far? Yeah. Let me just make sure I got that last line right. Response. Right. I'm actually not sure why this line is 100% needed. It just probably helps so that if the gather fails, come back here, basically. So it's some sort of self loop, right? Because we're redirecting to slash, but if you look at the top, these two slashes match. And what that means essentially is, well, slash is the code in internet for homepage. So every time you see slash, or slash index sometimes, but it's the homepage. So here we're just redirecting back to this so that if the gather doesn't tell us to go somewhere, we go back here. Right? That's what it's, okay, good. The last thing we need to do is return our response. So what this does is it forces the response to, stir is Python's toString method. So we're just basically doing response.toString for those who speak Java. But yeah. So we just make sure that we're sending back a string because sending back non-strings over the internet is a little dicey. Or it requires more setup. The next thing I'm going to add here is, this is just some Twilio quirk that made it work for me earlier today when I was testing it. So I recommend doing this. What is essentially happening here is I should probably go over this in a little more detail, but actually, okay, you know what? I might pause here and go over what that is because it's really important when you understand APIs. So, and I'm also going to change marker color to emphasize this. So when you have an API, usually it uses this protocol, HTTP. So when you go to websites, there's always that HTTP in front. It means this. And the essential idea of HTTP is you have pages or files that are just sort of stored somewhere, and you're trying to retrieve them. This has been sort of abused for APIs. So nowadays, you can have an API. It's usually called a RESTful API for reasons. But that means over HTTP, they're going to serve you something. But it's not a web page. It's data that's supposed to be read by a web application or just a computer, not a human being. Right? Because HTTP was originally for the internet made for humans. Now it's also for the internet made for computers. And the way HTTP works is when you request something, you have a few parts. You have a path, you have a verb. Do you have something else? Oh, yeah, and sometimes you have a body. Right? And so the way you can think of this is the path is who you're talking to, the verb is what you want them to do, and the body is any extra information you need to give them so they can do it. So for example here, the path is slash. Slash is just the convention for the root path, so like the home path. This is also a path, proc numbers. And then get and post are verbs. They're also called methods sometimes. What get means is usually you're just receiving some raw data from the path. It's like sort of reading, basically. So you're just getting the data. And what post means is you're posting an update. So you're going to do an action and it's going to update the data somehow on the server. And the data it's going to update will live at that path for whatever that means in the analogy. And posts will also usually contain a body with the extra information of what the data is that you're updating and how you're updating it. Does everyone follow that so far? All right. Yeah, now I think it is Twilio time. How many people actually have used Twilio? Or actually, better question is how many people is it that, like, when I said Twilio there was the first time they heard it? Awesome. So today you will learn how you can make phone calls happen for your web apps. So if you go over to twilio.com, you can basically, I should probably just do it, yeah, here, I'll just do it on a new private tab or something. Yeah, okay. So yeah, you'll get to this with Jacinda's face. You click the red sign up button. You basically just need an email, a first name, last name, email, password, and not being a robot. And you can make an account. After you make the account, I have to remember what to click. There's like, no, it's written somewhere. You'll probably end up here. Yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to remember how to do now.
In the button it says buy phone number.
It should just be on the left to get a phone number. It should be on the leftmost tabs.
Oh yeah. Here, let me dig around while people are making accounts. Oh yes, they want at least 14 characters, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
Extra security.
but now that means attackers can start at 14. I'm kidding. All right. Is it just dashboard? I don't also know what that is. Okay. Oh, right. It's here. Numbers. Okay. Has everybody gotten past the 14 character issue? Because it is this long, and if your usual passwords are not that long, I would recommend writing it down so if you ever use Twilio again, you have that access. What?
Yeah, you have to verify a phone number.
Oh, okay, cool. Then verify
Yeah,
phone
do
number.
it.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Like, I don't know, follow their instructions. I did this like 2 years ago, so I don't remember everything that they made you do.
No, they want your phone number so that when it does calls or like text message, it'll just go to your phone.
Yeah, so because you have a free account, they don't want everybody to be able to spam that like number. Because, I mean, they have to manage it with like phone companies and stuff, right? So that it's cheaper for them, they're going to make it so that only you can call that number, which will work for tonight and HackerU and other hackathons usually. But you can also get credits later on. And that's an example of how stuff isn't free all the time. All right.
Wait, does Twilio cost money to get an account?
Not the account. So everything you do today should be free.
Oh no, I meant because I did this last year. Do I still have a Twilio account?
Yes. Do you remember your password?
No.
Use
You-
LastPass.
If you use the same email, you can click on the forgot password button. I had to do that this morning, don't worry. Actually, not this morning, like an hour and a half ago.
Wait, did you buy a phone number last year?
Yes.
That's fine. We can just use that phone number.
Just letting you know.
What?
Wait, I never gave them my credit card.
No, they don't. But like, it's like charged on your account. If you have a free trial account, you get like $15 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, but it's like if the cheapest number is like $1 a month, so just letting you know. You haven't checked in a while.
Oh, I should get rid of this number tonight then. All right, thanks. Got me.
Yep. So okay, you buy a number from Twilio. It costs $1 per month. So even if you don't use it, it still costs $1 per month.
$12 a year.
Yeah. So
Well-
depending on how much you used it, you might want to.
Okay, so if after this hackathon or after this night you don't plan on using Twilio anytime in the next month or something, just delete the number. You can always remake them. It's not that bad. All right.
Wait, hey man, did they after like you made an account, did they like send you emails like, hey, we want to like talk to you over the phone, like over a phone call or
They
something?
send you a newsletter every month.
There's some stuff they send you. Yeah, they do spam you. It's so ignorable that I don't remember what rate they spam you at anymore.
Okay. I'm like, I hope I don't have to follow through. I'll also just be like, hey, your account is just gone, by the way.
The nicer email is that when you get an error, they send you an email.
Oh yeah, they did.
But they only send you on the first error, the 10th error, and the 20th error, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Wait, what?
okay.
Weird.
All right. Is everybody verified and somehow on like some Twilio thing that says that they're logged in?
Yeah, go to console, go to dashboard. Oh yeah.
I mean, I'll show you guys how to get a number once we're all on this on the same page, literally.
Literally need. Voice, SMS. Yeah.
I might as well like
You're never gonna use that.
paste. You good? Everybody on the console? All right. It should probably say get a free number.
Yeah, get
Get a trial.
Do it.
Get a trial number.
Do it.
So do that.
Make sure it has voice and SMS.
And make sure it has voice. So on the drop down on top of it, it should say like there should be some drop down on top of it. Click on it, and click on programmable voice.
Wait, what?
No, it's like a different pop-up. If it says voice, SMS, and MMS, that's pretty much all you need.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. There are like multiple
I- I don't-
pop-ups.
I don't want to take.
Hang on. Let me look at it.
Okay.
I just want to know. Yeah.
Yeah,
That.
it does that. instead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You see that pop up. Oh, you don't need to. You don't need to write down that number. We'll get to a screen that has that number written on it. Okay. So everyone has numbers. Anyone without a Twilio number? All right. Cool. So if everyone has a Twilio number, the next thing to do is click on the phone icon on the left bar, and then click on numbers. You guys. Wait. So you're here?
It's under trial, so you can see like a arrow going downwards.
Yeah.
It's a trial. You click that. You go to your account, and then you'll able to see the phone number.
Oh, okay.
Or you press the three dots on the very left.
Oh, so there's some 3 dots on the left you have to press to
Yeah.
get
It's like basically
this crap.
Then you said
And then, yeah, programmable voice.
so you
Numbers.
go phone number, programmable voice. It's called programmable voice.
Yeah.
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 Programmable voice?
Yeah.
Okay.
So programmable voice and then numbers. Everyone getting here, I'm so sorry I don't know this site that well. Okay. What? I don't know. How much more you got?
Probably more. Like, that's not very descriptive. What's it called? 7:15 sound good?
Okay, yeah. And I should keep track of time on my own. All right, half an hour. That's not bad. We'll get 1 or 2 things done. All right, everyone good with numbers? Yes, or on the screen. All right. Now what you're gonna do is click Manage Numbers, and you're only gonna have the one, which is good. And now you have to click somewhere for Configure. Oh yeah, and then you click this blue, which I think is super unintuitive and somebody should fix. And you'll get to this page.
Wait, click what?
The number. The number is a hyperlink,
Oh.
Yeah. Which, yeah, I think it's unintuitive, and usually that means it'll try calling that number or something ridiculous, like, what? Anyway. And then you'll get to this screen. So once you get to this screen, what you're going to have to do is go back to your REPL, and where you see the web page, there's going to be a URL. So take that URL and just copy it over to this URL.
Wait, do we gotta run the thing, run the program?
I'll do that after you do this. I mean, it doesn't matter what order you do it in.
Because we already have hello world here.
The hello world will cause a Twilio error, so you need to update it so that it'll run the code that we just put in, but we'll get there. Yeah. So everybody copy pasting in the URL. Did somebody not follow that? What's up?
What URL and where are you supposed
Okay, so you have the code open here, right, on this site. So where you see the hello world, there should be a URL. So copy that and smack it in here. Cool?
Wait, so did you change like the columns and the hello world URL?
No, so the one, yeah, a call comes in, you just put that. I keep forgetting you're not there in in the hacker hour, so it's like, wait. Okay, has everybody put this URL in? All right. So now we're gonna go back here. And we'll have to restart the REPL so that that URL actually has the updated code. So let's do that. Okay, why is mine being so problematic? It's gonna force its hand. Go. Okay, I'm still getting errors. Hopefully you guys aren't.
Did you also replace the post endpoint or the get endpoint in the number to yours?
What?
You have to replace like the callback on Twilio's console.
Oh yeah, no, mine has been replaced because I was testing this earlier.
Oh, just try finish. Finish should work.
No.
Also it works.
What?
Yeah, it works.
Well, no, this. Oh. Wait. Okay. Well, maybe I should have made the string different because I thought for a reason it was the old version of the code that worked. All right. So if everybody could restart on the REPL side, they should see this on the top right. Or whatever string you put there in the gather.say. Does everybody see their gather.say string like up here? Any problem, Dean?
No.
Okay, yeah. All right. So now if you want, you can spend a minute and you can actually call the number. So if you call this number, you should hear that message. Well, if you call this number, you'll hear my message. If you call your number, you'll hear yours.
But did they replace it?
I mean, I told them to put something. So they better put something. I don't know. If people want to stop and test it, they can. Oh, okay. Oh, it'll say something about it being a trial number. You'll just have to press something extra to get past that. People are actually trying it out. If you hear something that doesn't make sense, let me know. Yeah, by now Sam Agnew would have you all rickrolled. So. Oh, okay. What went wrong, if you don't mind me asking, just so I can.
I just said like, please call us if you need assistance in your development and hung up on me.
What? Okay, so some people got it working, right? You know what? Oh, there's a dog. Okay.
And then try to run now. Stop here first.
Oh, and then what?
Okay, run.
Yeah, okay.
What?
I did not get saved, that's why. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, you didn't click save. Okay. Oh yeah, so you heard the demo message.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah, they have some demo stuff. Oh yeah, make sure you click save here. I completely forgot that that's a button that exists. Okay. I'm going to assume most of you can hear Twilio being reasonable. Anybody having any like big issues?
Is this the call API?
Yeah.
I usually do the text API.
Yeah, it might be easier. Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, huh.
So he's having error in return.
What's up?
You can return.
Response is not defined. Yeah, you just misspelled response up there, mate.
Where?
There, you need an S.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That doesn't know anything in general.
There you go. Yeah, now if you rerun it and then do the whole Twilio thing, it should, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to assume everyone's good with that and kind of get through the last bit of code.
Oh, it's on the side.
So right now, what happens when you press a number is it'll go to proc numbers, because that's that action that we passed in earlier. And so now that we have a number, or now that we know it, what we have to get is what number the user passed in when they pressed the number pad. So the way to do that is somewhere. Hello? Okay. So the way to do that is it's in the HTTP, because what's happened is when Twilio sends back something to proc numbers, it sends back, so it goes to proc numbers as the path. The verb will be post, and then in the body there's going to be the digit. And what it'll be stored in is in the request values. So there's a way you can encode values, and that's how Twilio did to encode the digits. So what we essentially need to do is make sure there were any digits. So so that basically Twilio is actually calling us with some digits. So what? So that's what we need to write as the test. For those of you who speak Java, this is pretty much a hashmap.contains kind of call.
We didn't go over hash map yet.
So for those of you who speak Java, you will learn this in data structures and how this works and how it's fast and how it's good. But it basically makes sure that digits is in the values. I think it's straightforward. What?
Fix your intent.
I did, it's 4. See? 4.
Small.
Dude, it's also zoomed in as heck and wrapping. It's just not a good time. Wait, here, this should make it more clear. Where did I go? Oh boy. Okay. No, dummy. There we go. So what we can do now is get the digit if it since we know it exists inside the if statement. Right? So now we have the digit. And yeah, square brackets is like getting a value. It works how you think it should work. So Is the comment legible? Okay. Yeah, so essentially what happens is we grab the digit and we check if it's a 1 or a 2. I'm actually going to change this to an else if, so you can also learn a little bit of Python. And so if it's a 1, we go to dining, else if it's a 2, we go to buses. There's not that much more to it, I don't know, yet. I'm just going to write out the cases so that we know it exists, right? And let's say the user wanted 3 for Spanish or something. So there's an else. What? And what we're going to do in each case is want a response, right? So, let's see. Okay, cool. And so yeah, one thing I forgot to set up earlier is in any of the 3 branches, we're going to want to send a voice response because we're on the phone with the user at this point. So I'm just going to put that up there so that I don't have to do it 3 separate times. So everyone have some code resembling this, minus comments. I don't really care about those. Okay, if everyone's on this point in the code, one thing I'm going to do, we're not going to get to this, so return. Or actually, the best thing a bus can ever tell you is, you know. Yep. And here we can say something like, oh, wait. So the 2 easier cases are handled. We're gonna, if we ask for buses, we're not gonna do that today. Maybe as a hackathon project, you can do it. And if they do anything that's not a 1 or a 2, we're gonna tell them that wasn't an option. The last bit is what we're going to do if they want dining. If they want dining, I don't know. One of the things, because we're Rutgers, is we want to know which dining hall. So we should probably encode that. And so for that, we'll need a gather again. And we don't yet have more than 10 dining halls, so we can get away with 1 digit. I think I called it dining. Yeah. All right. Let's make sure I got everything right here. Oh, wow, okay. Man, I'm teaching myself how to use this too. Okay. Over here. All right. And in our gather, what we're probably just going to want to say, like, how do you spell Nielsen? I-E?
Yeah.
All right. Wait, I-E. I'm dumb.
You got it right.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So, you know, we just need to tell them to say something for that. And then much like how our hello world worked out, you know, we'd have to do response dot append. Was it response? Yeah. Response dot append. Gather. Did he put a redirect here? Nope. Okay. Okay. So this is pretty much like the hello world code. Yeah. So everyone get this sort of wall? Any questions, comments, concerns? Why didn't I copy paste from finish.py? I don't know. Oh. So I don't know, if you look, I don't know, finish.py doesn't use the digit variable, but I think that was a good idea. But what's going to happen, right, is we have this action dining. So now basically we need to implement that. And there's a pretty straightforward, and the stub code already has a function ready for us to be able to do that. And yeah, now it's just a matter of filling that in, because now at this point we'll know that the user wanted to talk about dining, and we know what dining hall they want. So we can start working on that. Let's just make sure I got the right idea. Okay, cool. So again, we know we're going to have to make a voice response, so we can just and again, we have to make sure they have digits and do all that jazz. So if digits in request.value, so this is literally the same thing that we did above. We're just getting the digit that the user pressed, because they pressed 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the dining hall. Now let me just make sure, let me check how he does this. Oh, see, he called it num. Okay. All right, yay, new stuff. So now finally we get to this point, because we've set it up to collect all the information from the user we need to make this correct, to get the correct menu. Yes? So Rutgers has this URL, which you should never visit as a human being. And what this URL is the Rutgers dining menu encoded as JSON. And JSON is just a way to basically pass hash maps back and forth. Oh, but nobody knows what a hash map is, right? Oh, that will be one time. All right, I got 10 minutes. So yeah, JSON is a way of storing objects, and so that basically you can just work with like structured things going back and forth, and you know how to like explore them. And I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but actually the best way to show you how horrible this is boop, ta-da, JSON. Actually, so one of the reasons it's horrible is because the people who made this call it .txt. Otherwise, Firefox is nice enough to format it nicely for you. But yeah, for whatever reason, they don't. But essentially what happens is you'll see this location name, right? That's like a field in your object, like an instance field. There's also other stuff, like there's meals field, and then because there's a square bracket here, it makes it an array. And inside that array, there are more objects, and you can keep doing this thing until we get some structure. And I'll show you how that structure is explored if there's time. Otherwise, because the stub already has a utility function that just does everything it needs to with the structure, we don't have to go over it in depth. But we just need these 2 lines of code. So I'm actually going to copy paste for the first time. No. Right, so, and for whatever reason it thinks I need to indent here, no. So what I'm doing here is making the web request. Request is a nice library that makes that very easy to do in Python. This get is actually the verb get that we saw earlier, and this is the URL. So if you want to think about it in terms of HTTP, this part is the path, like the /1/dining.txt. And the JSON is what we get back, that really ugly wall of text I just showed you. Yeah, but the nice thing is calling this function makes it parse into something that Python can treat almost like an object. It's called a dictionary in Python, but it works the same way. Okay, so once we have the request, okay, cool. Oh, there's a nicer way to do this. Anyway, so once we have the request, we just have to read the right part so that we have the right location, right? So if the user passed in a 1, they wanted Brower. So what we're going to do is, okay, for place in place in JSON, we're gonna so what the API gave us was a list of locations, and we just have to check if the location name field is Brower Commons so that we know that the rest of the object refers to Brower. So yeah, we do that. And then I think we just have to call our helper function that Shri wrote for us already. Thanks, Shri. Right. Oh, just I. Okay. Yeah. So print meals is that function that I scrolled past. It should be in your stub.py and it should work. Thanks to Shri. And it'll basically read the object that refers to Brower Commons and print out the menu. We don't really have the time to look at it because I ran out of time. But basically what will happen is this will run through the JSON, which is going to be a list of objects, each object being a dining hall in its menu. Check if the location is the location the user wanted, and then if it is, it'll print out the menu. And when it says print, it'll just convert it into something Twilio can convert back into a voice message. Maybe what I'll do is add the case for Bush, and then we can like pause, test it, and stop for questions. I mean, I'm just going to copy it from finished, but thanks. Oh, I don't care. All right. So now if you have these two, you can pretty much stop the coding because I think you all know how this works. You just need to restart your Repple. And the magic that is, well, everything we're working with should let you pretty much have everything working for Twilio. So once you restart the Repple, you should be able to call your Twilio number. And then after you press 1 and then probably 1 again, you'll hear Brower's menu for tonight. And actually breakfast and lunch. So yeah, that should be it. If people want to try it out, go for it. If you have any questions, comments, want hackathon ideas, stick around and ask, I guess. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for coming.